Bitcoin is moving a lot earlier and a lot higher than expected. The original cyclical trends, as per in the 4-year cycle theory, indicate that Bitcoin's moving about 200 to 250 days earlier than expected. And with Bitcoin breaking upwards earlier than expected, we have to ask the question, will it top out earlier than expected? Will we see a left translated cycle? I did a YouTube community poll a few days ago, and the largest minority of people in my community actually believe we'll be seeing a top between January and July 2025, opposing the 4-year cycle's position of a late 2025 top. I, at this point, am tending to see that argument as slightly more valid. But there also is the argument of super cycle, which is shrouded in mystery. So we're looking into today the left translated cycle, where the top will be if that occurs, and we're trying to shed some light on the super cycle as well. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it. Before we get into it, just a few things here, guys. If you're interested in trading altcoins with me on Telegram with a 78.52% historical win rate over the course of 150 trades, you can do so with our VIP trading group. You can find the link below to the information and results group, and through that you can join if you're interested. You can then check out the BingX and BitGet exchanges. BingX is global non-KYC and BitGet is global KYC minus the USA. As we head into the bull market here, you're going to need an exchange to buy and sell cryptocurrency on with leverage and spot. BingX and BitGet are great for that. My referral links are down below for 15% trading fee discounts. BingX is actually running a promotion right now. They're giving away iPhones, iPads, Apple Watches. Check it all out down below. My link will get you access to those competitions. And then finally, the bull market sale for the Crypto Academy's Become a Trader 10-unit course. If you want to learn how to trade, that's the place you can do it in a university-style manner. Check it out. The link is below. All right, guys, I'm discussing a super cycle today, discussing deviations from the previously established macro trends on Bitcoin, and discussing when the top on Bitcoin will be. I'm discussing this mainly because, well, first of all, it's relevant. We're in a bull market. We're pressing against all-time highs. We haven't quite broken them properly yet. We discussed that yesterday. We'll discuss it again tomorrow, of course, short-term price action. But I want to zoom out here, talk about macro. I did a poll on the YouTube community page here, and I asked the question, when will this crypto bull market top? Assuming we are in a bull market, which I think most people agree with by now. I don't know how you couldn't agree with that considering we're at all-time highs, but there are a few people who are always trying to be contrarian, I suppose. But when will the bull market top was the question. We had the largest majority of people saying, largest minority, I should say, of people saying that the top will be between January and July 2025, which is very interesting, right? I actually would tend to agree with that. I think that's what the charts vaguely indicate right now, which is interesting because the 4-year cycle, the traditional method in which Bitcoin is always maintained, right? Every single cycle we've seen has happened within the bounds of the 4-year cycle, actually predicts the top to be between July and December 2025, specifically October. And only 20% of people agree that 4-year cycle will play out as planned. So more people at this point are actually believing in a left translated cycle, a cycle that tops out sooner than expected, sooner than what we've historically been led to expect, I should say, which is interesting. And I do actually think there is a growing case for it. And you might have heard of some of the data in the past. I made a few videos on it, but I want to outline it all today in full. And I'm going to outline the repercussions of the 4-year cycle potentially breaking as well. But first and foremost, we need to understand what Bitcoin is doing. So it's clear that we're in a bull market, and it's clear that we're in the early phases of the bull market for a few reasons. One of the reasons is Bitcoin dominance hasn't actually started to decrease yet, which means the money flow cycle in cryptocurrency hasn't actually fully begun, because money flow cycle in cryptocurrency, basically, let me draw it out here. Imagine that this B here is Bitcoin, this E here is Ethereum, this is altcoins, and this is fiat, okay? What generally happens in cryptocurrency is the money comes from fiat, okay? It goes into Bitcoin during the bear market. Everyone flocks to Bitcoin for safety. During the initial phases of the bull market, everyone's in Bitcoin. And then when Bitcoin kind of gets near the top, which it's not close to yet as to why it hasn't topped out yet, or gets not near the top, but gets, a taste of its move in the bull market, the money starts to flow into Ethereum as people get greedy and they want bigger returns, right? They get higher risk tolerance, they want bigger returns, they go into Ethereum. Ethereum makes a move, and then all the money goes into altcoins. That's when you see an altcoin season, and then the market tops out because there's nothing else to happen. Everything's already pumped, and everything flows back into fiat, and then the bear market begins, and it comes right back into Bitcoin, right? We are at the first stage. We're kind of in between the first stage, right? We're over here, in between the Bitcoin and Ethereum run. Bitcoin dominance has stopped moving upwards, but it hasn't quite topped yet, right? Because it's not really going down. So we're not really sure if it's topped yet. It's kind of just stopped the rapid upwards trend, which leads me to believe we're in the kind of in between the first stage and the second stage here, which means we still have a long way to go. We still have Ethereum to pump, we still have altcoins to pump, and then we still have obviously the bear market to begin. So we are at the start, pretty much. We're obviously not at the very start, but we're in the beginning half, beginning quarter probably, of the bull market. And so that's great to see because it means there's plenty more to come. And within this beginning quarter of the bull market, we've already deviated quite significantly from what is expected as per established macro trends. Now, the ultimate macro trend on Bitcoin is the 4-year cycle. I want to make it very clear. The 4-year cycle is more than just, Bitcoin goes up after the halving and then it goes up for a bit and it goes down for a while. All right, the 4-year cycle is overall an umbrella term for many micro trends, right, that I've just circled that make up a larger macro trend. And this specific date range trend is really the key component of the 4-year cycle. Now, technically speaking, on a definition level, on a semantic level, if we top out in 2025, that would be and we go downwards after that, technically the 4-year cycle is intact, but for all intents and purposes, the 4-year cycle as we know it, right, ever since the first halving in 2012, the 4-year cycle as we know it is a specific date range trend within the larger definition of 4-year cycle, and that specific date range trend brings us to a top in October 2025, and so if we don't see a top in October 2025, for all intents and purposes, the 4-year cycle is broken, or at least the massive part of utility from the 4-year cycle, which the date range trend is broken. And so we need to look for other metrics as to how to trade Bitcoin on a macro scale. Now, right now, the problem with the market right now, because generally speaking, for example, this time in 2020, everything was on track, we were fine, and the market was just on track for a regular high as per the 4-year cycle. But right now, unfortunately, a few different factors, ETFs being one of them, perhaps cyclical predictability being another of them, people preparing for the cycle being another of them, has led this cycle to start to deviate. Okay, we are starting to deviate from the established 4-year cycle trend. It is not invalid by any means, okay? But the problem is us waiting for its invalidation would be us waiting for the top, in which case we would have missed the top. So that's the problem with trust in the 4-year cycle right now. We can observe it and see how it goes, but right now the fact of the matter is we have deviated from 4-year cycle trends to a certain degree, and we have to start expecting, or at least have to start, talking about other possibilities. So how do we know for a fact that we've started to deviate? Well, Bitcoin's moving faster than expected, and we can look at that through an established macro trend that is recently broken. That macro trend, if you look at the yellow lines on the screen, the yellow lines on the screen in the price chart, horizontal yellow lines, represent a rejection zone through which we generally see a pre-halving correction before the halving occurs, and then the halving occurs and we break that line, and within 2 months we're at all-time highs, and the all-time highs occur about 1,100 days apart from the prior all-time high. So these lines are connected here. The yellow line is connected to the all-time high date range measurement, and the yellow line is also connected to an RSI yellow line. Look at the yellow line in the RSI. Look at where we see these rejections from that yellow line for the pre-halving correction. They happen at the exact yellow line price touch on the RSI and on the price chart, right? It happens at the same time. So the fact of the matter is this is not a coincidence. It actually happened again in January. We touched the yellow line on the price chart and the yellow line on the RSI chart at the same time. If the trend was to continue, we would have seen a pre-halving correction for a few months. We would have seen the halving. We would have broken above the yellow line towards the end of the year, September-ish, and then we would have reached all-time highs around December, 1,100 days from the November 2021 top. Fact of the matter is we didn't do that. We actually just went ahead and broke the yellow line without rejection, without the pre-halving correction, and we're at all-time highs already. So what's happened is that Bitcoin has essentially reached all-time highs about, 200 days, pretty much 200 to 250 days earlier than expected, okay? And it's broken a macro trend that has lasted since 2013 in doing so. So Bitcoin has moved faster than expected, not only from a price level, but also from a monthly RSI level. Look, on this monthly RSI, we break down from 67 on the monthly RSI. It takes 1,030 days to break back above that level. Again, it only took us in this case, it's meant to take us 1,030. It only took us in this case around 820. So again, around 200 days ahead of schedule. On Bitcoin, moving faster than expected on a cyclical level, and that is evidence of us deviating slightly from the cycle. 230 days, 200 days, it's not a short period of time, guys. That's over half a year. That's close to 7 months, okay? So, if we're moving 7 months earlier than expected, acting like we're going to top out at the same time we usually do is a little bit irrational. generally speaking, if you move earlier than expected, especially when it's 7 months earlier than expected, more than half a year earlier than expected, you're probably going to top out earlier than expected. That's 101 logic there. Now, that doesn't mean it's true. That doesn't mean it's gospel or anything. It just means that's a logical kind of thing to say, a logical assumption to make. And so just based off that alone, if we're going to say, if we're going to objectively, it's an objective fact that we've moved 200 days earlier than expected on a cyclical level. If we're going to analyze that we've moved 200 days earlier than expected, we can look at the 4-year cycle. We can look at the top in October 2025, and we can say, look, we've moved 200 days earlier than expected, so maybe the top will be 200 days earlier than expected. All right, let me say that again. If we have moved upwards 200 days earlier than expected, maybe the top, which we know would be established to be October 2025, maybe that top will be 200 days earlier than expected because we've moved 200 days earlier than expected. I think I've said that word, 200 days earlier than expected, like 15 times in a row. I'm actually losing my mind just saying it, but I think you know what I mean, right? So if we bring the October 4-year cycle prediction of the top, closer 200 days, that would bring us to around March 2025. And so there is an argument to be made that the top will actually be in March 2025, not in October 2025. And interestingly, that March 2025 prediction is backed up by a few other things. Namely, it's actually backed up by a trend on, again, the monthly chart RSI. If we look at the same level, 67 on the monthly chart RSI, we can see that historically, from when we get above that level to when we top out on Bitcoin, it took 488 days in 2012. It took 390 days in 2017. It took 365 days in 2021. You can see a decreasing amount of days each time, okay? And if we go ahead and just decrease that number one more time, so let's say it takes, in this case, 330 days, that would take us to a top in January 2025. If we say it takes the same amount of time as the last cycle, that would take us to a top in March 2025, which is what the 4-year cycle just said. And then if we look at something like, for example, and I'm not saying that's a perfect trend, I'm just saying it's what we have. If we look at something like the Ichimoku Cloud baseline, okay, this is a very important, a very important line for Bitcoin. What you see generally is the Ichimoku Cloud baseline in orange, breaking above that line pretty much puts us in a bull market. Okay, every single time it's happened, it puts us in a bull market. It's very important. It's also very important resistance over the bear market. But the point is, if we're looking at how long it takes from the breakout of that line on the monthly chart, the Ichimoku Cloud baseline, to when Bitcoin reaches a top, it took 600 days in 2017. It took 580 days in 2021. And again, if we're going to decrease by about a month each cycle, like we've done on this trend here, it would take us to about July 2025. So we've got a few different predictive methods. None of them are perfect. None of them are gospel, that's for sure. But a few different predictive methods showing us that the top actually will be in basically the first half of 2025, okay? And we've got a objectively true break of a macro trend that has been around for 10 years, telling us straight up that Bitcoin has moved about 200 days earlier than expected. And if we cut 200 days off of the October 2025 top predicted by 4-year cycle, that takes us to around March 2025, which is right in the middle of the vague predictions that are being made about a left translated cycle. So what I'm proposing in this video is that Bitcoin has moved earlier than expected. That's objectively true in my opinion. I'm also proposing that right now there is a growing number of trends, and perhaps I'll be able to identify more over the coming months, but there is a growing number of trends suggesting that Bitcoin will have a left translated cycle that will top out in the first half of 2025. Am I making a prediction? No, because I'm not confident in it, right? None of these trends are gospel by any means. In fact, a lot of them are quite loose, okay? There's not much resemblance between 488 days between a break of this RSI line and the Bitcoin top and what happened in 2021, which was 365 days. Okay, that's a pretty big difference. So I will admit that I'm stretching a little bit to kind of establish a trend here. What I will say is that there could be justification in the decreasing amount of time it takes from Bitcoin to break 67 on the monthly chart RSI to reaching the top. And that justification could be the fact that we have this descending red resistance line that clamps the amount of space we have between 67 on the RSI and the potential top on Bitcoin. And so that means if we have less space to move, we obviously are going to do it in a lower period of time. And so that could justify the fact that each time it's getting less and less time from a 67 on the RSI breakout to the top. Now, I would propose as well that that makes this trend obviously a little bit more reliable. It makes the March prediction a little bit more reliable. Doesn't make it gospel, but it makes it more reliable. But I would also say this, and this might just, throw a spanner in the works just here at the end of the video here. If Bitcoin is doing things that are very unexpected, and it's already broken a macro trend, by the way, which is a very major macro trend, who's to say it won't just break all of the trends I've just looked at in this video? Because all of these trends, realistically, were based off past cycles, and Bitcoin has already proven that it can break trends from past cycles. Who's to say that Bitcoin wouldn't just go upwards and break this red line on the monthly chart RSI and reach a top much, much, much higher in a super cycle fashion? The answer is no one is to say that can or cannot happen. We simply do not know. What we can do, though, is exercise caution when Bitcoin approaches the crunch point of these trends. If Bitcoin approaches March 2025 or even January 2025 and it's getting close to what would be deemed the top by a previous historical trends, we can exercise caution, and then if it breaks those trends, awesome. We can jump back in and be risky again, because that would be a confirmed super cycle. But right now, the only metric we have to measure what Bitcoin could do realistically is the prior macro trends, and those prior macro trends are not as infallible as they have been in the past, but they still are all we have. So we need to trust them to some degree. Perhaps trust is the wrong word. We need to look at them and react to them to some degree. But guys, is Bitcoin entering a super cycle? It depends what you mean by super cycle. If you mean a cycle that's going to go up forever, I don't think that's actually possible. If you mean a cycle that's deviating from 4-year cycle, at this point in time, it looks like that will be the case. It's not fully confirmed, but it certainly is a growing, increasing argument, and we certainly do need to start discussing different types of tops, whether it be left translated cycle, whether it be a top that comes later than expected. We actually don't know. But I'll leave you with that, guys, and let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Again, check out the VIP group on Telegram for altcoin trading plans. Check out the BingX and BitGet exchange, and check out the Crypto Academy if you want to learn how to trade. Referral links for the exchanges are down below. All the links are down below. Guys, catch you in the next video.